Well, hello and welcome to my cellar one more time. There was an awful lot of comments numerically this past episode, and I looked at them, and they were literally, there was like 40 some, and I didn't feel like doing a lot of cutting and pasting, so we're just going to hit all over. It's shameful that they tried to trick Darlene into signing an agreement wherein she would agree to defend their ownership dispute with WotC. Couldn't even do the honorable thing and make it clear up front that's what they wanted her to do. What a bunch of cheats. TSR will never get my money. I would rather send Darlene $100 for her drawing than buy a single bag of dice from TSR learning about what happened. They do not deserve a license to any of her works. Well, hold that thought. I don't know if I'm talking out of turn here, but a concern compels me. It's my understanding that Darlene's going to be setting up a Patreon. She has some issues with her home. There's some code, if not in violation now, soon to be code violations. And so hang on to that thought. You may be called exercise it. Darlene's artwork is awesome. From your own personal stories of a lot of good people getting burned by the Bloom Brothers, the article The Ambush at Sheridan Springs, How Gary Gygax Lost Control, etc., by John Peterson, and successive books by John Peterson and many other stories. I trust Darlene's story is true. If there really was that kind of sexism in old TSR and new TSR that was never resolved, Okay. If there really was that kind of in old TSR and new TSR that was never resolved, in my opinion, she sounds like she knows what she's talking about. From the perspective of a 13-year-old in 1985, far away from Wisconsin, we had no clue nor care in the world about the internal conflicts of the company. Later in life, it's been quite a fascinating revelation to see how hobby evolves and devolves over time. Yes, it is interesting, isn't it? And sure, yeah, you're 13 playing games and all that. You didn't know what was going on. Most people, it was a dirty secret in the industry that everybody's creatives got treated kind of shabby. Yeah, all the other stuff, but we'll probably be we'll be touching on this topic again tonight. Next, I finally got a copy of Classic Warfare a couple of years ago, but never actually played it. Now I'm inspired to do so. And someone else made a comment to the effect on Classic Warfare that they were sure that the Normans probably fought the Byzantines. Yeah, they probably did. I don't know if I made some offhand comment, but the Vikings fought the Byzantines. That's how they became the Varangian Guard. Okay, somebody quoted me roughly around 1320 of last one because it's fantasy and we're just giving out shit and shovelfuls anyway. Love that line, and it is so fitting. Well, people get so tense and uptight about all this. It's fantasy. It's fun. It's not what you're doing to pay your grocery bill and to pay your rent. It shouldn't feel like that. Sometimes for us that write it, it feels that way. But it's supposed to be, fun. My favorite, now we were talking about magic items. My favorite magic item is from Jack and the Beanstalk and the golden harp that shrieked as it was being reclaimed by Jack, and thus waking up the giant. Well, actually, with a little careful thought, you could trigger that effect on anything by just playing a charm or a curse, or however you want to look at it, upon it, so that when it's touched, it lets out a horrible blood-curdling, screams, whatever. mating call for a boulet, something that's going to mess up the players badly for it having happened. Yeah, that's always fun. Now, we're going to talk more about magic items here. Next comment was, glad to hear you're looking at expanding Snake Riders. I would love to see an Osric version of it. Well, wait no more. We're going to do an old school generic OGL Osric. I'm not sure exactly, but I do know that it is going to be non-specific or non-system specific. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, because I've got the second half already done out. I'm sure it could stand some fleshing, but I've got it pretty much out, written out. So and it's on the old hard drive, which I won't get rid of or wipe or anything because there's so much work on there. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. That's going to be a project this year. I'm also I've been asked to be involved in a couple of other projects. Project by that's being corralled and cat wrangled by Jim Ward, and another project involving Ralpartha Legacy, their Chaos Wars, the continuing story of the Chaos Wars. Been asked to do some writing about that, so yeah, I think I might. Tim, during your editorship at the Strategic Review and the Dragon, were there any authors, let's say excluding Gary or authors of the fiction pieces, whose work you held in particular esteem, irrespective of how much their work you published? Yeah, I'm going to give you two that maybe you weren't expecting, but one would be Tom Wom and the other would be Dave Trampier. I'd have done more Tom's stuff in a heartbeat. His cartoons, he wrote little pieces, and Tramp writing Wormy was just brilliant. That was brilliant creative work. And beyond those two, no, I'm not going to name anybody. To be honest, I can't really think of anybody that immediately leaps to mind. Okay. I, like you, Tim, like Ernie. It's greatly saddened me to see him caught up in this debacle. At this point, if he's even able to, I would like to see him sever ties with certain people and realize what he wanted to be a part of just isn't what he hoped it would be, and the damage being done to his name and his reputation is fast mounting. In any case, keep doing what you're doing. I tune in every week and join your take on many topics. Well, thank you. Yeah, I do too. It really saddens me that Ernie's like the old Brer Rabbit story about the tar baby. He's just stuck in it so bad now he'll never get out. Tim, in regard to magical shield versus thieves, what's your ruling on players disguising valuable magic items? That is, magic shields bumps me up 3 classes, so I paint it to look shabby and mundane, thus putting off would-be thieves. Well, actually, if you stop and think about it, I think you should disguise just about everything, so that you aren't a walking target for either monsters that like magic or other humanoids that covet magic. I know that when I do put a magical item into a dungeon, particularly a loot pile, let's put it this way. I very seldom put something on a pedestal with a dais with a light shining down on it so that when you get into the room, there it is. All right, we're not doing the Holy Grail here. I like to disguise stuff, and I frequently do. Now, we're going to talk more about disguise magic a little later on. It's a great point we're going to bring up that sort of ties into this. But swords don't have to be shiny and glittery and that. In fact, I would think it would be an advantage to have a +1, +2, even a +3 sword that just looks like a well-made ordinary sword. Nothing to draw the eye or cause people to cast covetous glances your way. Tim, I live in Australia, but when the USA is quite COVID safe, God knows when that'll be, I intend to visit one of your cons to ask you to sign my AD&D core books, the ones you edited. Well, let me stop right here. I edited everything up until the hardbounds. I did not edit the hardbounds. I had input in the formation of the first hardbound, and then I backed away. So look carefully to see who's listed as editor. And most of the hardbounds, I'm just a thanks, special thanks, or other, I'm just another name in the mob of people that Gary thanked. So if I ever gave that impression, I wish to correct it now. Okay, now as to signing books, sure. I just had a gentleman from Alaska send me 3 books that I signed for him and sent him back. So yeah, sure. I'm honored when people ask me to sign their books. And so please take care of your health and healthy living so you're alive and well, and then you can sign. You see, my fiancée and I intend to have a marriage ceremony in the USA where most of her family live. A great opportunity for me to also visit one of your cons. Well, I happen to know at least 1 or 2 cons where you can get married at them by a real live minister. Just saying. Think about it. A March wedding in Wisconsin. Or a June wedding in Texas. Anyway. And I can't offer the services of the personnel involved, but I'll bet there wouldn't be a problem. Dear Mr. K, have you ever used a crossword puzzle as a template for a dungeon map? No. Too many blocks. Too many black spaces. Have you ever taken anything from mass media and repurposed it for D&D, such as it was unrecognizable afterwards? Yes. Mazes. I had a book of mazes that was brilliant for my purposes because I could just erase a wall here and put in a wall there, and it would not be the same maze that I started it with, but I didn't have to draw out all the rest of that crap. I loved leading parties of characters into mazes and watch them blunder about for a while. But then again, I'm just mean. But that's the only mass media thing that I've used. Though I will be very honest and say that there are a couple of websites where you can go have a small snippet of a dungeon randomly generated. I have done that. And in fact, I probably got a couple, 3 of them still lying about, just to, have something on hand should something unforeseen develop. So, yeah, I have done that. There's websites where you can get city names and character names, and, I've looked at a few of those, but I don't rely on any one of them full time. Okay, now, this is interesting. Now we're going to talk about magic again. The DMG states, magic rings, quote, must be put on and various things tried in order to find out what it does, end quote. This has created intensely funny rituals around what happens when magic rings are discovered. Characters quickly begin punching one another, jumping off soft ledges, 10-foot ledges, burning each other and wishing for more intelligence, etc., in order to hopefully guess the ring's use. Is this the expected outcome? Is this how your players would go about it? Or are my players slightly touched? Ha ha ha. Now, in response to this one, there were 3. Sounds fun. It is, except for the fighter who usually has to volunteer to be the test dummy. Awesome rule, awesome outcome. I like this style of play where things are solved by players using their brains instead of their dice and perception score. Yeah, I do too. I have way back in the day that was not an uncommon practice to figure out. However, think about this: if you're randomly just shouting out commands and whatever, and you happen to shout one out and it works, what if that was the only charge in the ring? Ouch. I have tended to allow detect magic to do that. Not necessarily right there in the middle of the, not a detect magic like you would throw to see if that chest, but a deeper level detect magic that would take some time, which would in fact be the magic user studying. I don't recall that we've ever had anybody just standing around barking out commands to see what worked. But it sounds funnier than hell. I'd probably enjoy it a lot. Many thanks for your opinion on my vampire werewolf inquiry. Okay, here we have if we remember that poor bugger that got bit by both in the same day. I'm currently working on the outcome for the player, my brother. I've decided that once a month when the moon is full, he will transform into a hybrid of both. Semi-human in appearance from the vampire side with canines to match, the vamp being the dominant creature of the two, but retaining the claws, innate savagery, and increased size and strength of the lycanthrope. Well, you might be overlooking something here. I'm just going to pause for a minute because vampires are attributed to have really, really, really great strength. Now, I don't want to get into a semantics debate about whether, a big dire wolf is stronger. However, it's just something to think about. Pale white skin, red eyes, and a somewhat increased hirsuteness will complete his okay, that's what he's going to look like. Whether he'll retain some semblance of control over his actions is yet to determine. Perhaps his lawful good alignment on a die roll will come to the fore. An internal battle between good and evil. One thing for certain, it will either be an interesting plot addition to the narrative or a complete adventure ender. Laugh out loud. Kind regards. Yeah, boy, that's harsh. They say I'm harsh. Congratulations. Okay. I'm sure it's rude to mention underworld or underwhelming world as I come to think of it. But it could become an interesting thing for this this is a follow-up. For this hybrid lycanthropist vampire to attract others of its kind, hybrids that is. I was going to say, can't be a hell of a lot of lycanthropic vampires running around. But yeah, you could have some other oddballs, and then you could end up having a legion of anti-heroes with all these really nasty hybrids that are just bound and determined to mess up anybody that, anyway, I digress. It would swerve the campaign into an unexpected territory, hitherto unknown species with God knows what plans for the world. What all you and your players could do with that would really be fascinating to hear about. Well, if original post here, if that's where you go, you can let me know in a year or two how it came out. Okay. Are you able to furnish us with any info on your confab with Darcy of Star Hat and Duck Quest? Well, it was basically a consultation that I did with him for services previously rendered, because I don't normally do this stuff for free. But yes, I analyzed the game. The game has some brilliant concepts. but it's very weak in one regard to the American gamers as I know them, and that is that it requires complete and full trust in your game master, and that seems to be in damn scarce supply today. However, I think it has possibilities. I think with some a little more curating type work to the system, that it's possible, but it's going to take some work. The mechanics of creating characters are brilliant. 5 numbers, five slots. We can put one in each. The way you creating a character with a 3-sentence backstory is inspired genius. Inspired genius, and could probably be used in other systems to justify slightly less than puke level entry level players, or slightly more than puke level. Okay, then there was one that I cut and pasted. Okay, a D&D question. The title of which is to be sung. No. Should all alignments be forgotten, never brought to mind? Yeah, well, we see where that's going. Should alignment be abandoned? Now that RPGs are part of the culture and people know how to roleplay, and since we have RPG innovations like listing character traits, interests, obsessions, alignment, is alignment simply a vestigial component of the game? Additional question, is social class a useful indicator of character? If a player rolls high on starting money, for example, is it fair to say the high roller, might have certain character traits due to a high bar start in life, and conversely, characters have traits suited to low-born social classes? That's classist. With all the other ISTs that everybody's coming up with, I'm surprised they've missed this one. Everybody, the basic premise of becoming an adventurer was that you were a cut above the normal herd. You weren't content to live your life out, never going more than 4 miles from your farm or whatever, and you sought adventure and pardon me, mystery and danger, not to mention loot. So I wouldn't like to see that be part of character persona as well, how they're born. You know, I mean, how cliche do you want to get? Poor farm boy who set off on the road with nothing but a stick. Dissolute rich kid who, doesn't matter to me. Class, I would rather not see class in there. The class, adventurer. It's all the class they need. Let's see how to finish this off. So no, I don't like classes. Should all alignments be forgotten, never brought to mind? Probably. We're going to talk about alignment again here in a little while. But yeah, probably. You make the point of, okay, you all know each other, you all have certain expectations, and more likely than not, you're going to have certain feelings about what actions are not nice to do to people. Okay, and traits suited to low-born social classes? Oh, please, no. If you're willing to go out on the road, on the tramp, so to speak, you got to be able to cook for yourself and find wood and, learn how to dig privies and stuff like that. Well, I don't know. I'd like to think you were right about this internet thing, but no, I don't think it's... You might enjoy it the most of what you see on the internet. Okay, now we're going back into alignments again. And these are some opinions of one of the writers. I spent I have some opinions on the alignment part of your post. I hope you don't mind me sharing. No, that's what we're here for, is share ideas. But don't, this is not something I'm going to do frequently, so don't inundate me with how you think something ought to be done. I spent a fair amount of time, wait a minute, need some oil. Oh, I just saw this. That's a note that no longer applies. Better late than never. Okay. Okay, I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about this topic, and I've put a few things into words I've thought of in the time I've been watching. Oh, and Mr. Cask has put a few things into words I never thought of in the time I've been watching him here. I think it's important to point out first, it's not a one-for-one mapping of ethical reality. It's a mechanic, or a tool, for a game. My personal criticism, I've come to find it primarily with how it's an imperfect map of ethical reality, and less how it functions as a tool or manifests around the table. I have found that the more you attempt to tweak it, the less effective as a tool it becomes. I think the tool itself is extremely valuable, and it's philosophically is close enough, in my opinion, that it's endlessly discussed, debated, and used to this day. Tim at one point said that Gary would say lawful is predictable, chaotic is unpredictable. I added that to the language I use when describing the alignment to new players because I felt it's a really effective way to put a concept that I think tends to get overthought by many people. Good and evil are a little more self-explanatory. You can be an ethical relativist in reality, but end applying that, I'm a typo. Okay. And applying the universality of your PCs in the setting they exist in doesn't tend to make for more effective gameplay, narrative storytelling. Just my experience. You start to unravel alignment, and that touches everything from the planes to the deities. I could rant for a long time. All right. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. The whole idea of lawful and chaotic was ingrained tendencies, is one way to put it. Native abilities, native behavior, ingrained behavior, so that if you ran across, let's pick something here. Okay, let's take tavern keepers. Most tavern keepers, to stay in business and to keep a good reputation, would be lawful, in that they would treat everybody the same way. We hope they would be good in that they didn't gouge you and feed you bad food and give you bad ale. Now, if you had somebody that had no experience running that tavern, you might expect their reactions to be chaotic, not in the expected way. Okay? Lawful, normal bartender, and I'm using a ludicrous example. Lawful, normal bartender, walk in the door, they're going to say, hey, and they're going to greet you, especially if they know you. They'll at least greet you and say, hello, stranger, if they don't. Now, it'd be chaotic as hell if you walked into that bar expecting a greeting and had an empty beer mug. An empty beer mug chucked at your head. That'd be chaotic. And it'd be evil if they hit you. It's all it is. It's a tendency. The only time it really matters is in relation to whatever importance religion plays in your campaign. Now, if you're really strict, if you make your clerics declare to a specific deity and you require them to elaborate on what their deity requires and some of their rites and rituals and stuff, then it has a lot of bearing on whether or not you're staying true to the precepts of that deity. If you aren't doing that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The only time it might matter is if they're supposedly lawful and didn't, or supposedly good and strayed. Well, they might they might have some bad karma. They thought they were safe rolling. If the monster rolled less than 10, oh gee, they hit me on a 9. Okay, bad juju, bad karma. That's one way you can deal with it. But it was all about predictable and unpredictable. The Fae, all of the Fae, the pixies, the nixies, the dryads, the elves, before they became Tolkien's elves, were chaotic. They were capricious. They you never were quite sure, unless you had established a long-term relationship with a particular Fae or a particular family of Fae or whatever. You never knew exactly how they were going to act. And hey, even the ones you were friendly with might still pull pranks on you every once in a while. That's chaotic behavior. Never know. So when you say about a child, you just never know what that kid's going to do next. That's chaotic. Okay, now we have another follow-up on that. I agree mostly. I'm not trying to make an argument for realism in D&D. That's not the aim of this. I am provoking the curmudgeon, a serious task, but the question doesn't necessarily represent my personal game style or RPG quality. Let's see. You rightly point out that the alignment concept fuels a lot of discussions, and I believe that has led to interesting innovations which bear investigation. I think there are other ways of structuring fair character roleplay, but they may not be better than alignment. My advice, don't throw the alignment baby out with the role-playing bathwater unless the aims of the style of play everyone wants to try calls for it. Probably down to personal taste. I have no quarrel with if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I did like the old Lang Syne pastiche. Hopefully Tim did too. Nah. Didn't dislike it, but nah. Okay, now another comment on Darlene, on behalf of Darlene. I wish that she called out Dave Sutherland III. That she called out TSR makes it seem like Gary Gygax was the person creating a toxic work environment for her. No, that's not fair to either one. You'd have to understand Gary's, especially early on, Gary's management style. Gary believed, in my case, that the company needed an editor. I interviewed with both him and Brian. We talked over it many times. It was decided I was the person. Let's see. I had been there less than a year. In fact, before the first Dragon came out in July of '76, I had been pretty much told by Brian and Gary that I had autonomy. After I'd done a couple of supplements, Brian came on board and pretty much didn't bother me. They knew I was given an assignment. I would have it done by the time it was done, and they would be pleased with it, as was the case every time it happened. Gary was, unfortunately, for us, for him, for the sake of his company, perhaps he was a little too hands-off or oblivious with the other departments. It's particularly art. Gary and I we were much more attuned when I came on board because of all the year and some that we'd had on the phone comparing ideas. And so Gary said, okay, you got editorial, go do it. And he went back to doing, writing stuff and whatever, and I was pretty much autonomous. Same thing happened with Dave. Now, Dave was pretty much autonomous, and I'd be willing to bet that, like me, Gary did not know that Dave had said no, flat out refused, etc. No, because I believe that Gary commissioned her stuff for the inside cover of, whichever one it was with the unicorn. The same way I did, not knowing that Sutherland was against it. And much like I did when he found that out, said he didn't give a shit. He liked the art and he liked Darlene and he was going to give her some work. So I'm not saying give either me or Gary a medal for, carrying the feminist flag, but I personally had no qualms with having an artist, because I didn't see artists as sexed. I just saw them as artists. And when I'm getting stuff with initials and last names and that, I got no way of knowing whether it was a male or a female that painted or drew that picture. No idea. If I liked the art, I used it. I used a few females. Not a lot, because quite frankly, there weren't a lot of females drawing fantasy art. Not because they couldn't, but because they were discouraged from it or hadn't approached it yet. Very simple, I believe. So, yeah, Gary could be faulted for not keeping a tighter rein on it and realizing what was going on. But in his defense, I don't think he couldn't even imagine that Dave might have that kind of an attitude. We didn't know Dave that well yet. We hadn't realized yet that he was a, dyed-in-the-wool misogynist. So yeah, there's a little blame there, but he had a very enlightened management style. Hi guys, there's your department, go run it, and as long as everything goes smooth, I'm cool with how you're doing it. Great way to work. I have a question about magic items. Is it okay for a DM to take away items from players to help balance the game? No. It's your obligation to do that. If you made a mistake and allowed something into the game that just absolutely wonked out the game, then crock it. Break it. Have it destroyed in a fall. Have it stolen. You can easily weave it into story elements to allow for it, but don't let a single magic item unbalance the entire game. Don't give them the one true ring. Of course not. That's way too big. Too powerful. It's your obligation to take them away or nerf them if they're imbalancing if they're unbalancing or creating an imbalance in the game. It's your obligation. The game's supposed to be fair and fun for all. The people that don't have that wonderful magic item begin to look for fairness they can't find. And as a DM, you wonder just how much crap you got to take with this player busting up everything you did and still be fair. It's your obligation. Okay, another comment about Darlene. In support of. I'm also supportive of Darlene's, and I'm sorry that she or anyone else at the old TSR had to go through that. She is right to take the stance she has with the new TSR. I'm so shocked about Ernest being involved in this also. When I finally went to my first GaryCon 4 years ago, I got to play with him, Heidi, Elise, and Luke. It was a dream. No, really. I've written, played, and DM'd D&D since 1980 without stop, except for a couple of years during 4th edition. Yeah, a lot of people went underground then, didn't they? This is one of the top things I ever wanted to do. I chatted with all of them a bit in there and online over the last couple of years, and I believe the family is good at the core. I feel bad for the rest of the family having to deal with the negative light cast upon them, Gary, and the con. In December, I decided not to go to GaryCon this year. It's partly because of this turmoil and partly for health reasons, COVID concerns. I hope to return in 2023, and I hope that the chaos of the past 6 months can blow over and heal the wounds within the community. I love D&D, and any edition I get involved with, and I hope that those causing issues realize that the game is more than a game. I look forward to seeing you once again. Also, Sarah, I played your Wheel of Game Blame. Oh, okay, all right, Wheel of Blame game, not Wheel of Time. Last year online and enjoyed myself silly. Good gaming, be safe, be wear a mask, and get vaccinated. Yes, indeed, I agree with all that. It is a shame. And it's, I don't know. I'm really, it's getting hard to find anything new to say about this. I would, it'd be good if it'd be good when you come. I'm just pretty much run out of things to say on this topic. There was a response to that. Yeah, let's try to keep it safe in real life and restrict danger to our games, where it's no big deal if our characters die. I agree. Okay. Okay, I was quoting as saying it's still tough for lady gamers, and I was refuted with, no, it isn't. Also, beyond a dumb TSR employee, ladies have not had it tough in this hobby. I've been playing this game with women for decades, to which the response was made, lucky you, glad to hear it. Well, I'm going to refute that. If you're fortunate enough to have been playing with females, playing with anybody other than straight cis males all these years, lucky you. Lucky you. Because believe me, that has never been a prevalent practice, welcoming females into the game. Never has been. In some areas, maybe. But I have witnessed DMs at cons lie to females that come up to the table wanting to know if they don't still have a place or two open, could they play? No, it's all full. They don't want a woman at their table. That's a shame. Because it's been my experience, and I know if you ask Jim Ward, he'll tell you the same thing, that it's a great add to the party to bring another point of view to the problem. It's a great add. Now, if you live in some nirvana somewhere where ladies have always been welcome at the table, great, and I mean that sincerely. But I must tell you that you are living in a minority zone if that's the case. For so many reasons, ladies have not been made feel welcome in this hobby. For so many reasons that I'm not going to go into them now, or it'll be another 10 or 15 minutes listing all the reasons and things that have made women unwelcome or feel unwelcome in this hobby. If you don't think it exists, take a poll of 50 lady gamers and tell me what you find. Okay, last thing I'll bother you with here tonight. The 14th was my birthday, 73rd. And I have asked people to support an organization that I am very, very attached to. Okay, go on my Facebook page or go online and look for the Wild Animal Sanctuary in Colorado. And last year I raised a little over $300. This year I was hoping to raise a little over $500, and I'm not making it. But if every one of you went and looked at that today, whenever today is for you, and watch your videos and feel that they're, pledge $5, pledge $10. If enough of you did that, I could raise even more money for them. My wife and I went out there, it must be 10 years ago. And they were really in a growth stage, and they had the one facility site, and they were expanding, and I was blown away. They rescued large carnivores, mostly, from all over North America, from little flea bag, cement pit, roadside zoos, any places where lions and tigers and bears and jaguars and cheetahs and all these things are getting abused. Now, I don't know what species they have there right now. They might not have cheetahs or jaguars, I'm not sure. But I know they got a ton of bears and lions and tigers and cougars and other animals that you don't want to, roughhouse with. They have these amazing environments for them. They don't put them in a cage. They give them a couple of acres, and they build dens into the hills and stuff. So everything that animal, whatever the species could want, is there. And they have warm, dry places to winter. Great place. I love the place. Have this fascinating walk. You walk a lot farther now than you used to, and look down and see the various habitats and see the only cages the only really cage-looking cages is where they acclimate the new rescues. And they got so big and so good at what they're doing, they have a second facility also in Colorado, I believe. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, go look at them. And if you believe that they're worth following, well, just go to my fundraiser, and it'll be open I'm sure for a couple of days after my birthday, and donate a fin or more. And I'd really, really, really appreciate it. And all the people that do it, I get their names, and I've been saying thanks to all of them, because I really do appreciate it. So that wraps it up for now. Finally got to play some more Black Seas. I like the game the more I play it. Highly recommended. Back to painting. Yay, got my painting table back, because all the Christmas stuff's been put away and stored away for another year. Not going to a con until later next month for Total Confusion. So, in the meantime, I still do Wheel of Blame games online. If you and 4 or 5 of your friends are interested, let me know. And take care of yourself. Please reduce your risk of exposure to Omicron or to any of the COVIDs, please. Play safe, play smart. I want to see you at the next con. Dodata Gobi.
Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's a curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. NuTSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.